to Extraordinary Women, a podcast where everyday women talk about the extraordinary things they've achieved in their lives. With me, your host, Denise O'Brien. Welcome to Extraordinary Women, our podcast about everyday women who do extraordinary things. And today I'm very excited to introduce my guest to you. This is Shelley Svoren, and Shelley and I have just met through LinkedIn, and we are just getting to know each other. So I am really looking forward to this interview and bringing Shelley to maybe a different audience through my listenership on my various media channels. So Shelley, you're very welcome.
I am beyond thrilled and honored to be here having this discussion with you and your listeners. So thank you for this opportunity.
Great. Yes. And Shelley and I were just speaking a little bit before our live feed. And what Shelley is very interested in is helping females in business to expand, grow, and develop their opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to a conversation about that with Shelley today. So for those of you who don't know Shelley or who do know Shelley, I'll give you a little bit of background. So Shelley is the CEO and founder of Infinite Branches. And Infinite Branches works with startup businesses and investors to build sustainable connections within the global aviation industry. So I know that Shelley has a background in finance and also in aviation, and also an interest in investment in wine, which we might want to talk about as well today a little bit. But yeah, so Shelley, for those listeners who may not have an aviation background or a financial background for that matter, would you like to explain to us a little bit about what it is that Infinite Branches does?
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity to share this with people. Let me give you a little bit more of a background and context. I like to say I'm a recovering banker. And before that, I was a recovering federal banking regulator in the US. And in between, I served in corporate finance positions for very large multinational corporations. So I have a mixture of a financial background, but also some of the things I've been tasked with have been determining whether or not businesses can operate profitably and sustainably. And a lot of these businesses that I've been involved in are highly regulated. Obviously, the aviation industry, the banking industry are highly regulated. And people may not realize it, but the wine industry, which I've spent some time in, both as a lender and working in corporate finance for, are extraordinarily highly regulated. Anything related to alcohol is regulated heavily in the US as well as other countries worldwide. So I have subject matter expertise, but I also like to say, I can't know everything. It's impossible to be a subject matter expert on every single subtle nuance of these highly regulated industries. So what I like to do, and the Infinite Branches are being able to reach out to a network of people who I have built partnerships with and support my clients by tapping into those partnerships and obtaining excellence and creating value for not just me and my client, but for the entire industry as a whole. So I like to take a holistic approach when I address a particular issue and say, okay, that's one part of it. Let's expand our horizon. And how will this benefit us down the road?
Okay, great. Okay, well, that makes sense. And in terms of your client base then, Shelley, how would a client find out about you, or, how do people know what you do and come to you for support?
Well, right now I am entirely referral. People can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the most professional way to reach out to me. Find out a little bit more about some of the articles I've written, some of the organizations I've become involved in. And I think that gives you a really good idea of who I am and what I'm about by what I post. Second of all, go to my website, www.infinitebranches.com. Take a look at the services section, and you'll see a plethora of tasks I've accomplished since starting Infinite Branches 3 years ago. And I do that because we can do so many things if we allow ourselves to be creative and, again, tap into our network.
Yeah.
So some of the fun things that I've been tasked with right now, I'm in the wine industry with a long-term client of mine that runs a massive family office, and I'm supporting the needs of 2 portfolio companies and potentially a third. We're getting to that. But we're rebranding. We are bringing in new talent. When I worked at Silicon Valley Bank many years ago, we talked about S curves. And what that means is essentially you go up super fast and then you can plateau unless you start rethinking about what you need in order to achieve your vision. So we're on an S curve, and I'm super excited about the connections I'm bringing and where we are taking these 2 organizations. I've also written white papers for clients. I've written business plans for clients. I've developed budgets for clients. I've got some of my clients as keynote speakers that allow them to expand their network as well as their client base. And that's been really gratifying to see how people have succeeded one step at a time.
Yes, absolutely. And recently, actually, I delivered a webinar for aimed at females, women that work in aviation, in any element of the aviation sector, mainly attended by ladies here in Ireland. But one of the things that I discovered when I was researching some of the content for that webinar was the small percentage of women in aviation that make it to, CEO level and C-suite level. And I know that that's maybe something that's dear to your heart with the work that you do in mentoring and supporting women in aviation. So would you like to talk to us about Iowa and tell our listeners what that's about?
Absolutely, Denise, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about this amazing organization. I found out about the International Aviation Women's Association back in 2012, and I joined in 2014, and I sat as a member for a little bit, just really trying to understand how I can contribute. And I had somebody tap on my shoulder at an aviation industry conference where there were 75 people there, and 4 of them were women.
Okay.
And they asked if I'd want to become involved. And sure enough, that was the gateway to it. What I found by saying yes to becoming involved, I found a way to connect with other women in a way that made sense for me, to build relationships that were not transactional, and to intentionally look for ways to highlight skills, experiences, thought leadership of women who weren't being heard, or that wasn't what they did on a daily basis. So it was creating avenues for growth, and not just myself. And I eventually was asked to serve on the board. And currently I serve as the VP of Leader Development. Iowa is the International Aviation Women's Association, IAWA, not to be confused. There's a lot of women's groups out there, but not to be confused with any of them. They all serve a real need to connect women in the aviation industry. But what I like to say about Iowa, our members are not the people in the industry who make the aircraft fly. So meaning there's nobody who really sits on an aircraft in a pilot, mechanic, purser, flight attendant. Those are all needed. But these are the people who write the contracts, who run the businesses, who provide the insurance, who provide the financing. And this is a place where we can connect with each other. Now, as the VP of Leader Development, I specifically focused on the areas that support the growth of our members, the career growth of our members, and that's very broad. So one of the things that we have found is that while the scholarships are impactful, they do make a difference at that point in time, what our members need right here and now is support and guidance. And our mentoring program that we created a couple of years ago, it had
Mhm.
always been in play for a little bit, but when we decided to purchase the Cooper app, and Cooper is a global organization that specifically focuses on mentoring. So they work with Google, they
Wow.
work with Pfizer, they work with Brown University, they work with the Air Force.
Mm.
They specifically focus on mentoring. And so this platform, through the power of AI, allowed us to match 50 mentoring pairs with a click of the button.
Wow.
And you had to input a certain amount of data. It took about 10 minutes. But what we've found 2 years into it is that
Mm.
of the 100 plus members who have participated, both as mentors and mentees, nearly a quarter have taken advances in their career because of this was a tool in their toolkit. Now,
Mm.
the mentoring program is not the sole reason for everybody's success, but you know what? It's a tool.
Yes, absolutely.
And it is about supporting the growth of other people and also being open to growth yourself. And so the 12-month program, we are so excited to see, we're about ready to reopen it to the next cohorts at the end of next month in
Hmm.
March.
Okay.
And I'm incredibly excited to see where we go from there. But in order to participate in this program, where you have senior leaders from the aviation industry, from commercial, from airlines, from cargo, from business aviation, from insurance,
Mm.
from finance, you have to be a member of Iowa to participate.
Okay. And that is that limited to a certain geographical area for anyone who might be watching that might think, oh my God, I would love to put myself forward for that?
Denise, that's an excellent question. This last cohort, we had people from over 30 countries participating.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So we had 5 continents represented. And that's one of the things that is really profound about Iowa, where you can be anywhere in the world and you can
Mm.
make a connection to someone and truly grow your personal experiences, your professional experiences. We have so many different opportunities to become involved at a global level. And in fact, in the month of February, I know this will be aired in March, but we
Hmm.
will have had our first major event in Asia, in Singapore, that is attached to the events surrounding the Singapore Air Show. So it's something we're incredibly excited about. And
Yeah.
we will be having our annual conference in Dublin, Ireland this November.
Yes, that is exciting. So the female cohort over here can come and meet you in person, obviously, and chat to you about that face to face in November in Dublin. Wonderful, but that's a phenomenal movement that you folks have got going there. So congratulations on your work with Iowa. And in terms of females in business or female entrepreneurs, what advice would you have for women who are maybe doubting themselves or not really sure if going out on their own or stepping into a new role is the next big thing that they need to do? You know, that doubt that can creep in.
Well,
Yeah.
I have been there.
Okay.
I have definitely been there. I had worked for the same organization for over 17 years, and I wasn't progressing in my career. Opportunities were not being given to me because people didn't, quote unquote, see me in that position, or they didn't think I would move because I had children.
Mm.
And it wasn't so much my mindset that I had to change. I was fighting against people's whose mindsets were inflexible. And I hit a point where I decided I need more for myself. This is not how I want to end my career. And my oldest son had said to me when I was ready to leave and I had no idea what I wanted to do, he said, "You're not happy. You deserve to be happy." And he was standing by the fireplace next to a photo of my grandparents, his great grandparents. And he turned to me and he looked at the photo and he said, and they would want you to be happy because that's what every generation wants for the next.
Wow.
And he was only 20 years old when he said that.
Very wise.
And he had watched me when I was on conference calls, taking him to school, picking him up. He knew the work that I was doing, and he would constantly ask, when are you going to take a step forward? So the point of me sharing that is that there are people around you who can be your toughest critics, but who love you, and you should listen to them. Okay. You should also take an audit of your own skills and experiences and talk to the people within your personal board of directors, as I like to call them. Pick your personal board of directors wisely. They shouldn't be yes people. They should be people who push you to think outside of your comfort zone. And I did that. And I decided I could go to work for another bank, which I didn't want to do. Or I could try and do all the things that I couldn't do because I was told I couldn't do them, and find fulfillment in that way and figure out a way to build a business around that. So I'm doing a whole lot of things that might seem disparate, but when it comes down to it, every single one, I bring a piece of me and I try and instill some success, not just for me and my client, but to everyone who I bring into the community. So what I would say is talk to people within, I like to call it, your personal board of directors. But also, once you're there, remember what your value is and never back down from it. One of the things that I found is that a lot of people will reach out to me and they'll want my advice. They'll want access to my contacts. And quite frankly, that is one of our most treasured assets, particularly as women. What we bring to the table, we think about things in terms of long-term relationships. So never give that away. Never divulge or diminish your value. I recently had to say to somebody who called me up and wanted information for free. I said, my clients pay a lot of money for this, and you're asking me to give you this for free. So if you'd like to enter into an engagement, I'm more than happy to do that.
Very good. Yeah. Did that take practice to get clear about saying that, Shelley, to be able to put a boundary in place around your time, your energy, your services?
Absolutely. One of the most important self-care steps that I have learned is the power of saying no, but doing it in a way that makes you feel whole and the other person understand your time is valuable. Your time is limited. And where you put that, you have to really decide, especially as a female entrepreneur, there are only so many hours in the day. You need to sleep in order to think properly. You've got to focus on building your brand. You have family, you have friends. So volunteering your time, it's fifth on the pecking list. So you've got to do something that deeply resonates with you, who you are. And in my situation, I like to say, if I were a book, it'd be titled A Work in Progress. So I'm constantly progressing towards the vision that I have for myself as a human being, as an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a partner and spouse.
Yeah. I mean, you said something a while ago that really struck an interest with me, was you had a revelation that this is not how I want to finish out my career. This is not the end for me. This isn't the end game. And I found that to be really inspiring, actually, because I think if we try and see a little bit into the future, I know we don't have a crystal ball, but I think part of the rebranding, maybe making the change and taking the big step, is to think, okay, in 20 years' time, what would I like my legacy to be, and what would I like to have fulfilled? So it sounds like that was an important part of your decision-making process, Shelley.
It was, because what we do for ourselves, it stays with us, but what we do for others lives on after we're gone.
Mm.
And that's something to constantly think about too. Sometimes we don't realize the impact that we're having. And I was speaking with a mentee of mine, and I'd gone through a hiccup in my life. We all go through that.
Yeah.
We all have good days. We all have not good days. And we were connecting on a particular issue. And she said, you have no idea in the short period of time how much impact you've had. And she started listing off the other women who were in similar situations as I was, who've gone on to start their own businesses. And some of it is just by default, by going out and doing something on my own. I gave them permission,
Yes.
which I want to make sure that if you are out there, if you have a desire to start a business, give yourself permission to pursue that. Sometimes we don't, because we're so busy with so many other things. I was in a situation where I had saved up a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
And I knew I could take time off. And I did. I didn't start my business right away. And some of the things I started with in my mind, thinking that I haven't done. And that's okay. So you need to make sure that as an entrepreneur, your mind is fixed on certain things, your values.
Yeah.
That needs to be the most important thing you remain fixed on. But have a dynamic mind when it comes to seeing new opportunities. So you can hold both in your hands and in your heart and continue to move forward.
Yeah. And in terms of the values there, I get a sense that the work you do is driven by what you value in life. And obviously doing this here with me today and doing the work that you do with Iowa, how important is that values-led decision making for you, or how has it brought you to where you are?
It's a great question, and thank you for asking it. I've also built into every single one of my contracts a termination clause. And when I found you walk into every relationship with the best of intentions, but there are times where you need to part ways. And I've had to do that a couple of times, where I've said to clients, I appreciate the opportunity to work with you, but I'm exercising Section X of our contract, and I wish you the very best. And I mean that with all honesty. But there have been a situation where something just wasn't working. And I've always looked at who I am and who I want to be associated with for the long run, and make sure that it continues to stay on point.
Yeah. That's really,
we're both headed in the right direction. We oftentimes spend so much time on reaching out, connecting with clients, potential clients, and referral sources, that we forget sometimes the power of saying no.
And as you said, does this align with my vision and my values? And it's because it's not all about the figures, the money, right? It has to be about, as you said, making a difference, leaving a positive legacy, not just the figures in the bank statement, Yeah.
And those have been areas where I found somebody else that would be a better fit.
Yeah, exactly. So are you a believer in creating your own luck, or do you think there's an element of luck involved in just being at the right place at the right time? What's your take?
I absolutely believe that everything you do will come back to you, good, bad, or indifferent. And luck is not something that you can count on, but it does happen. And this one amazing client that I'm working with now, I happened to be walking my dog in my small town and ran into him. And one thing led to another. And he reached out and asked if I'd come to work with him on his portfolio companies.
Wow.
And it was right place, right time.
Mm.
I don't think he would have thought about me had I not been there.
Yeah.
But we'd had that long-term relationship where the trust had been built.
Yes. And I guess you were in some way open to receiving creative ideas or inspiration or contracts from any possible stream, I guess, you know.
Absolutely. And this has been a really wonderful opportunity to branch out, pun intended.
Uh-huh.
But it's also allowed me to show some of the people who I've worked with in the aviation industry how flexible and how dynamic and how creative I can be. It's one thing when people think of you in one particular way, solely as a banker. And when they get to see the creativity that you do have, it's a great way to highlight your multifaceted skills.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say to anyone else, male, female, any person, to open yourself up and don't be afraid. Be curious. And I'd also like to say, too, there's a lot of talk about me spending time supporting women in the aviation industry and female entrepreneurs in general. We need to support each other. We need to believe that when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. But I'm a mother of sons.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned what my oldest said to me, and both of my sons had different roles to play in me leaving where I was and looking forward to the future. And I do support the young men who are growing and need additional support, need to see different types of leadership in the various industries where I'm involved.
Yeah. What is it, Shelley, do you think that these young men need to see as role models in terms of behavior or success?
I think everyone needs to see what success looks like from different perspectives. It's healthy. Success shouldn't look just like one particular aspect, making lots of money, bringing in a lot of contracts. There are different ways to view success. And I'll go back to a Harvard Business Review study that looked at 15 years of female versus male CEOs and how women in general, and this is a big generalization, because we build relationships and long-term partnerships, you tend to have more meaningful growth in organizations rather than growing for the sake of growing.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And yeah, I mean, I'm here talking about women, obviously women entrepreneurs, but we acknowledge good support from wherever we've had it. Or, the lady I interviewed for this month talked about a male mentor that she had in her life who practically changed her life, so this is all about, positive role models, whatever the sex, so it's great to hear you advocating for that as well on behalf of your sons. Yeah. So,
and I've had great male mentors and male allies, and we have to cultivate great people within our network, regardless of what gender they are.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things I did want to ask you about was your virtual board. You called it your own board table. Like, I know myself as a female business owner, as a business owner that started out on my own. The mentors are very important, but having people who can advise me on things that I'm not strong at, the financial side of things, legal, tax, marketing, sales. So I've invested and I've got support over the years in all those areas myself and continue to do so. Do you have any tips or advice for anybody from your experience as to how to build that network and that community around you?
Well, I like to start with ABC, which is my motto, always be curious. And be
Okay.
curious about people, about who people are, what people are, how people are, and keep an open mind. A lot of my first impressions about people have been horrible. In retrospect, they're almost laughable. And don't just cut people off if you've had a bad impression. Give people an opportunity. The people who serve on my personal board of directors, they're people who are upbeat, who are talented, who always push me to think outside of the box. They're different ages. They live in different areas of the world.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that perspective. We can only see so much. And when you find people who do not think like you, it allows you to really open up your mindset.
Excellent.
So,
yeah, I love that. And I love the diversity of age cohorts as well. I think that's important at the leadership table, that we look at our own biases maybe around certain generational styles of leadership, and that's a very current topic at the moment as well. Intergenerational activities in the workplace and that. So yeah, you've obviously explored that by the sounds of it.
yes.
With your board table. Excellent. So Shelley, in terms of wrapping this up, I wanna firstly thank you for your time. I think I could talk to you for hours, but I know our time today is limited, and I know people can meet you in Ireland in November. Anyone that's involved in the aviation circles, you'll be in Dublin, and that will be well publicised anyway between now and then. Your own business, we'll put a link to that here. But just finally, in terms of advice for any women that are listening to this who might look at someone like you in awe and think, I'm just too ordinary. Like, that kind of success just doesn't come my way, because I think that's, in my experience of working with women, that's where we fall down, because we don't have enough female role models. What would you say to somebody who's feeling like that today and who might be wanting to make a change?
I was where you are. Everyone who has started a business has been where you are. So think about what your strengths are, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself. That's something that I've always done. There will be great days. There will be not so great days. So surround yourself with people who can see who you really are and can bring out the best in you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Shelley Svoren, you are an extraordinary woman. Thank you for being here with me, and I look forward to meeting you in person in November. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to having a pint of Guinness with you at a Dublin pub in November.
and some surfing, maybe, you said, if you get over to
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Extraordinary Women with Denise O'Brien and guests. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, please contact me directly at denise@o'brienlearningsolutions.ie, or check out my website www.o'brienlearningsolutions.ie, where you'll find more free resources and interesting articles. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to spread the word and get in touch if you are an extraordinary woman who would like to share her story.